So I'll be basically giving like a quick talk on like decentralized exchange, high-level overview of 0x, and then one of the 0x blockchain engineers will be zooming in to like answer some Q&A if anyone has any. So yeah, 0x is not a decentralized exchange itself. It's a protocol for building decentralized exchanges, and we just call them relayers. And so just as like an overview, I'm sure everyone's familiar with what centralized exchanges are. There's like this concept, term in game theory called shelling points, and I think that's what primarily a lot of people were kind of gravitating towards centralized exchanges and like the way the interfaces were set up, where people went in the absence of familiar solutions would kind of gravitate towards existing solutions. And I think that's what centralized exchanges were when prior to the launch of a lot of big centralized exchanges, we had like regular P2P exchange. And so I think we can like improve upon that, and maybe like decentralized exchange is, I think, the way that we were supposed to do it in the first place. Yeah. And so obviously, you know, like centralized exchanges are custodial, and we've obviously seen a lot of problems with custodianship because of hacks. And because the tokens, when you do decentralized exchange, at least for some of the protocols and the exchanges that exist, you won't have those issues with your funds being stolen. And like another concept of like centralized exchanges is that like it's like defeats some of the points of why cryptocurrency exists in terms of like the self-sovereignty and the custodianship that you control yourself, right? Everyone says like you can be your own bank, but then centralized exchange is just like another form of a bank. So I mean, not to shit on them too much, but like they like I think they're a necessary step towards what we should be striving for in the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And then, as I mentioned, like right, we have like it's a honeypot, it's aggregated, and then we have like so many hacks, right? It's like hackers just want the easy access versus when you have decentralized exchange wallets. When you have wallets that are connected to decentralized exchanges, they would have to go after each one of them, right? And so, yeah, it's expensive to maintain, and it's very difficult or slow moving to integrate a lot of these decentralized applications or decentralized finance products. And you have also like the liquidity that's siloed, which I'll get to a point where like 0x wants to solve that kind of liquidity problem between different relayers that build on the protocol, which is also a reason why they didn't create their own proprietary exchange like some other exchanges have, maybe like AirSwap or let me say go, yeah. And then you have decentralized, you have no custodianship, no centralized hot wallets. You have a lot of, exclusive to cryptocurrencies. So I think it avoids a lot of the issues that you have with regulators in governments, because they, I think, take issue with the fiat connection that you have with cryptocurrencies. And then you have the ability to have anonymous transactions, yeah. And so 0x, so that was kind of like an overview of like centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges, but the 0x protocol, like their kind of mission statement is like create a tokenized world where all value can flow freely. And so you have just more than cryptocurrencies that can be traded on them. Sorry. And so Will Warren, like the CEO of 0x, kind of like put out this statement in a blog post. I think it was like a pretty nice way of kind of summing it up. And Sheehan kind of mentioned in his talk about how like a lot of us in like first world countries maybe have like won the geographic lottery when it comes to accessing certain financial tools. I think it's important enough I'll read off. So it's like the primary determinant of an individual's economic freedom and opportunity in life boils down to the geographic region they're born into. And so the lucky find themselves in a country where the government provides the populace with a voice, education, uncensored access to the internet, sound economic policies, and a minimal level of government corruption. Simply put, most people are not this lucky. Blockchains give us an opportunity to leave the geographic lottery behind by establishing an open and globally accessible financial system that acts as a potent equalizing force for the world. So I think like there's like maybe different reasons why people want to interact with cryptocurrencies. And I think it also boils down to maybe like what would be considered like first world problems, I guess, and then third world problems. And so like, right, it levels the playing field for what kind of access people have, regardless of where you are in life, I guess, geographically. So like the vision is like instead of just cryptocurrencies, you can have a lot of decentralized financial applications and products that people can access. And so some of those include like, the currencies. You have stocks, bonds. You have traditional financial instruments that maybe some people might not have regular access to because of regulations. As she had mentioned, like the Forex markets, the derivatives markets, like margin trading is heavily regulated in Korea. And maybe not as much in other countries, but that I don't think like government oversight should prevent anyone who wants to risk or have the appetite to make more money. And so so I think that's the next one. And so like this is also like a point out of one of Will Warren's blog posts about how markets are eating the world, where you can have access to assets on the blockchain. And then you have like the different types of costs that you have with decentralized exchanges, where you have, obviously you would have fees, but lower fees when you are using the protocol individually or on your own. And then we'll get to like how relayers work, where you are able to visit liquidity and match. So these are just some more examples, like stock, real estate, derivatives. You have like video game items that you can change. So like if people are familiar with like non-fungible tokens, you have the ability to trade them on decentralized exchanges. And then 0x is like kind of the platform and the protocol that relayers can build off of and give access to. And so it's a core settlement layer for trades. You have like a hybrid between like the order book model, where you can provide liquidity for each source. Of course, it's like non-custodial. And then relayers, what's a nice thing about it is like instead of moving away from like siloed liquidity that you see with centralized exchanges, you could have different exchanges that are built on 0x protocol, which we call relayers, that can share their liquidity across the world. And so 0x protocol is essentially like a token and a protocol, which relayers will kind of access. And so like the token is obviously can be used for fees that relayers have by providing that kind of convenience factor. The protocol itself is free to use, so like 0x has like kind of an OTC trading desk, which is free. And then you also have like this concept of governance, where the community can be involved with voting for certain protocol updates. And so like how you have like EIPs in the Ethereum ecosystem, you have like ZEIPs. And then the protocol is like, it's kind of like a standard messaging suite combined with like smart contracts. So like if you're familiar with like interbank transfers that traditional banks use, it's like SWIFT. So yeah, like SWIFT, it's like basically like you would have like a standard way of communicating with people using the protocol, so that not everyone is kind of coming up with their own way of messaging formats. So like when people are trying to like communicate, at least with their code, this is at least like a way that people can like kind of agree upon, like a set of rules. And then also it's like the smart contract suite that 0x provides the community. It's like open source. And then this is where you can have like the governance part, where people can update and vote on. And so that obviously would kind of come from like the relayers who hold these tokens, and obviously like community members who can basically provide like updates that they think are valuable. So obviously how they run, and then it's in the best interest of everyone else to kind of like see what can be done so they can operate more efficiently. And then again, like network liquidity I think is very important, especially in the decentralized exchange space, where instead of kind of having to like rely on your own way of bringing in kind of tokens and stuff that you would, or orders and stuff that people can share. You have like, you can build on dApps, token abstractions, like it's like a building blocks. You can think of like, I think a lot of people on Twitter talk about DeFi as like Lego blocks that you can build on top of. And so there's a lot of projects that I think maybe some people are familiar with, like Dharma, Set Protocol. You can integrate like CDPs to it. And then also another person who'll be talking later is you can have like Fulcrum, which is like a margin trading and lending platform that you can build on top of 0x as well. So 0x makes it actually really easy to set up an exchange very quickly with a launch kit. And they have like customizable UIs that you can provide. So you have like ERC-721s like NFTs for like game items or CryptoKitties, and then like a standard like interface API or an interface that you can have for what you would see in like a traditional exchange. Yeah, so there's like currently, I think probably more than 30 projects. The aggregate volume as so far as like $140 million. So I guess like still needs to go a ways. And then these are some of the projects that I'm sure people are familiar with, some of them. Like Paradex was a decentralized exchange that kind of got acquired by Coinbase. Not kind of, they did get acquired by Coinbase. Yeah, and so there's like different relayers for different markets, not just cryptocurrencies. You have collectibles, prediction markets like Veil. Well, I guess Veil is not doing that anymore, but you have commodities. Yeah, and then so it's really easy to get started. I think it's just like, Will Warren also kind of mentioned how localization is an important aspect. Like geographic localization is important, which is why I've been building this platform with Sean from the earlier presentation. And there's also like localization in terms of the types of assets that can be traded on using the 0x protocol with the relayers. And so those are just kind of can be like siloed between, not siloed, but classified between different types of products that you want to use, so like collectibles versus like just tokens. Yeah, that's 0x. Thank you.
Yo, all right, yeah. Thank you.